Greetings, and welcome to another episode of Nutritional Knit, where we bound by truth and knit together in healing. Today, we are launching a critical series focused on kids and caregivers. This is not about shame, it's about awareness, it's about truth and power of choice. Our babies are sick and struggling earlier than ever before, and it is us. We come today to sound the alarm. Let's talk about what's been normalized, what's really going on inside their bodies, and how we begin to heal one household, one habit, and one truth at a time. So, tonight, I'm super excited to have with me Mr. Sam Davis. You all know me as DeNitra Davis. And so Sam Davis is with us tonight. Let me just cover a few things before we go forward. Basically, I want to make sure you all know our disclaimer. This is a show for educational purposes only. I'm not a medical doctor. Mr. Davis is not a medical doctor. And nothing that we share today is intended to diagnose, treat, or cure disease. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any significant changes to your child's nutrition or medical plan. This conversation is rooted in science, experience, and love. It is designed to help you become more informed and how to advocate for your family's healing. I also always want to give you a recap from our last show, which was the illusion of health. We had clarity with Clarissa. And on that show, we explore how someone who appears healthy on the outside, but metabolically compromised on the inside. So Clarissa Joy, episode 4, who's a lifelong runner. She was also a pescatarian. Notice I said was a pescatarian. She had a fasting insulin of 8, and she was near the pre-diabetic threshold. Once she began to understand what her numbers were, and she started to change what she was doing, then she was able to drop 13 pounds in 1 month and regain her vitality, right? And now, she was sharing with us about how her daughter is watching, how her friends and family are watching. And so if you haven't seen episode 4, The Illusion of Health, Clarity with Clarissa, make sure you check that out. So this show tonight is about really trying to get us grounded. It's back to school time. And there's this urgency as we start to take our kids back to school, right? They're going back into classrooms, lunchrooms, educators are going back. And so, we felt compelled to share about kids and caregivers. How do we get kids to understand what's going on with their bodies and become their advocate? And how do we get parents and all of those that are caring for children to understand? So I'm going to turn it over to Sam. He's going to introduce himself. He's also the co-founder of Nutritional Knowledge. We came up with our business together through our own journey around health. And now we are advocating for others to be well. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sam, let him tell you a little bit more about him as an educator, as a father. He's in the classroom on a daily basis, in a school setting on a daily basis, and really working with our kids. And so we want to take it a little further and just see what's happening in the classroom. I'm going to turn it over to you, to Sam.
Thank you, Nitra, or should I refer to you as the ACE? I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to, anytime I have an opportunity to share information with my people, particularly your viewers, I'm really excited about that. Let me just preface everything that I'm about to say with my objective from the perspective of a teacher. In fact, this will be my 26th year as a teacher. So let me just preface this. My objective, our objective, is for us to build sustainable eating habits and lifestyle pathways that perpetuate lifelong health and vitality for our kids. Let me say that again. We are endeavoring to build sustainable eating habits and lifestyle pathways that perpetuate lifelong health and vitality for our kids. So if that's controversial, I am a controversy. So remember that objective, because we'll refer to it often throughout this discussion. I wanted to say, as an educator, as a historian, as one who has lived for a significant amount of time, there are some disturbing things that I'm noticing, patterns in health and incidences and occurrences of health. Thousands of our kids, guys, are metabolically sick. They're metabolically sick. Their insulin levels are literally spiking up and down all day, every day. And this is caused primarily by the food products and highly processed foods they're consuming on a regular basis, not to count the carbs. And so we want to have a discussion today that would lend itself to us re-examining some of our habits relative to how we send our kids to school. What are we sending our kids to school with in terms of the lunch? How is the school providing lunch for our kids? What is that based on? What are the limitations and the strengths of that? And so we want to become critical about our kids. Let me just give you guys some information relative to that. At this point right now, 1 in 5 children in the U.S. are obese. 1 in 5 of our kids are obese. Now that's a cross category, not only our kids, but total in the United States, 1 in 5. That's 20%. That's enormous. 1 in 5 teens have prediabetes. That most of them are undiagnosed, meaning they're sick, but they've yet to be diagnosed by a physician. Black children have the highest obesity rate at 24%. That's nationally. 24% of our kids are obese, which obviously means their insulin is all out of whack and they're on their way to chronic diseases. Type 2 diabetes is increasing faster among Blacks and Hispanic youth. What's causing this? This is alarming. We have to address this. No one else has the responsibility for taking care of our kids but us. And so there are numerous other statistics and research and studies. But I mean, you pretty much get the picture. We are at a point where this is a dire situation. We have to intervene now.
Thank you for sharing that, because it is disturbing, this decline that we have in child health. And we are, wondering what's happening with our kids. Kids are being diagnosed with ADHD. The diagnosis for them have gone up 42%. I mean, I can remember being a child and that was never a diagnosis, right? I can remember, we didn't even know the word obesity as a kid. It was rare that you saw a kid that was large in school, right? Our Black teens are suffering with, vitamin D deficiencies. And so the idea is that this is no longer about weight or appearance. It's about chronic inflammation. So we talk a lot on this show about insulin resistance, right? This liver strain, this hormonal dysregulation developing in kids who are just learning to write their names. We're seeing this more and more, and we kind of just had this acceptance in our society. So when I'm working with clients and they come to me for their metabolic health, if I find out that they have children, guess what? I'm dipping into what's happening with your kids as well, because usually it is about what we're eating. So a lot of times we've been taught that things are hereditary, that, my mama had it, my daddy had it, that's why I got it. So what we're saying is this is not hereditary. It is really dietary, right? This is really that we are eating the same thing. So when you think about what we're feeding our kids on a regular basis, like cereal to us is a breakfast for children, right? And so we're going to just kind of dance back and forth together on this idea, because I remember, Mr. David Sam, you were bringing home the snacks and things that were being fed in school. So let me just say that this is not a slaughter on schools either, right? Because all of us are being governed by the Department of Agriculture that determines what's the pyramid, what's the my plate. And so any government entities, I mean, this could be a hospital. When my son was in the hospital last year, there were 20 vending machines. Even the food that they were bringing my son were totally contrary to what his diagnosis was. So I don't want you to hear, because we have an educator on, I'm also an educator, that this is a slaughter on schools, but this is more of a awareness for parents to recognize what they are feeding their children and what they're eating at school. And then we wonder why, we have these big instances of ADHD or students not being able to focus, right? It's the sugar, guys. It's the sugar that we're feeding them every day. Mr. Davis mentioned that the students their insulin is spiking. So as a metabolic health practitioner, what that says to me is that they're on an overload of sugar. And so how do we dial that back down? How do we dial that back down? So Mr. Davis, if you can just talk about some of the topics to unpack around what kids are seeing in school for incentives, parties, what's happening with that, even before we get to the cafeteria, right? Like, let's just start with that.
The school culture, essentially, which is one of the issue. The things I have an issue with is that we essentially perpetuate sickness with our kids by sort of rewarding them with treats, M&Ms, Snickers, even Takis, which of course contains that red dye, which is proven to be poisonous. And so it's a cultural kind of thing. And I wanted to show how your viewers, how it manifests in a school setting. You made reference to the ADHD. Many of our kids are officially diagnosed with ADHD, which essentially gives them the leeway to exhibit certain behaviors and do certain things in school without any consequences. And so you can imagine how that might unfold. But also with self-regulation, we're finding that a lot of the chemicals in the stuff that they're eating is affecting them on a molecular level. And so they're not able to self-regulate like previous generations because of what they're consuming. And that often leads to a lot of disciplinary issues and suspensions and stuff like that. And then ultimately the mental clarity. Oh my goodness. Many of our kids in the morning in particular, they're tired. We've had discussions over the years about moving school starting times back so as to give them an opportunity to get sufficient rest. It's not the amount of rest they're getting, it's the food or food products that they're consuming is affecting them in a way where they have no energy. And so I think we need to look at it from that perspective as opposed to change. I mean, we're avoiding the crux of the issue. But those are some of the ways that poor nutritional habits manifest themselves in the school. Of course, you got vending machines, and then you got the meal themselves. But as you said, we're not bashing schools. We just want to give parents an opportunity to see this is perhaps one of the few areas where you get a chance to control the outcome. And then at the end of this show, we're going to kind of lay out some action steps for you. So we don't just want to describe or identify a problem, but provide you with some action steps you can use to protect your children.
Thank you for sharing that. And so some of the things that I think about is, and I am guilty of this as a teacher, is that was one way we rewarded kids, right? We would have these classrooms. I'm seeing it in churches. We say candy for good behavior. This is a treat for you. And so we provide these sugary rewards, not thinking about how it is impacting the body, right? And then we have pizza parties. I can remember doing this as an educator, where if my kids had a great week, then it was an incentive to be able to come to the pizza party. I mean, you can get $5 pizzas, right? So that's a inexpensive way to feed a lot of people, right? So here we are, the inexpensive pizza party. But then you have these donut days, right? We have donuts with dads because we want dads to come to school. So this is an incentive to get dads in schools. And then you got muffins with moms, right? This is the way that we are perpetuating this issue of our children being sick. So let's just think about, there are snacks for entertainment. If you have a May Day, they're drinking the freeze cups. They're drinking just the salt. They have those little straw things that they can have. You mentioned Takis earlier. So we're feeding all day long our kids this food and have some expectations for them to be optimal, right? And the alarm that we're sounding today is that they will not be optimal eating this way. I don't care how old they are. I don't care how much they exercise, right? So kids are drinking 30 to 50 grams of sugar in one sitting. So if they've gone out to eat and, you know, we feel like, well, don't give them the Coke and don't give them the Dr. Pepper, give them a color drink, right? Give them the fruity drink. That should be better for them. It's going to be the same amount of sugar, right? And so I'm going to add into this, not just schools and home, but it's happening in our churches as well. I've been in churches where there's a whole treat thing, and before the children leave out of children's church or Sunday school, they get a chance to choose a treat. So I want you all to take away from this conversation that these are not treats, they are actually defeats. Let me say that again. They are not treats, they are defeats. We are defeating our children when we feed them this way. So something I want to add is, let's just look at a day of what a child may eat. So let's say at home, you know, a parent is doing breakfast at home. I'm going to use me for an example, right? We started in the morning time with Apple Jacks, Fruit Loops. It was quick, it was fast, it was something the kid could do. My son could do that for himself, you know, pour his own milk. Then when we tried to change a little bit and started doing Cheerios, we would add banana to it. All of that is sugar. I stopped feeding him white bread and I started feeding him wheat bread. So, because I thought I was doing something better. Then if I did a hot breakfast for him, I'm going to make sure he gets his grits or his oatmeal or his, at the time we used to do hash browns. And to me, I was sending him off with a good breakfast. What I know now is primarily all of what I just named is sugar. The only thing is when we moved to having bacon and eggs, that wasn't sugar. And I know what I hear from parents is that I just need something fast and quick. So I try to teach parents how to prep for that. You have to be able to prep for that. But this is happening in our schools. It's happening in our churches. It is happening in our homes. We are consistently feeding our children what is defeating them. And younger, I'm seeing with my clients that their children are pre-diabetic. And we're going to talk about lab work, right? So I want to switch just a little bit, Mr. Davis, and say, when you think about the kids in school, and it says, how do kids respond when we bring in something different? So when you start talking to your kids, I know you've had some conversation with some kids one time, you know, when they're watching what you eat now that you've changed. And so let me just give you that caveat. We both are on a healing journey. We both are better on this journey. And guess what? We're doing better, and that's why we're here trying to help others do better. So, Mr. Davis, talk about what the kids are saying now when they see you eating something different at school.
Well, they're naturally curious. A lot of times they don't understand why I don't eat what the majority of the people at the school eat. Knewtritional, I want to go back to something you said that really resonates with me, where you were saying about a lot of the parents want something convenient. And I understand that. And from a father's perspective, as I was raising my kids and I look back on it, I wanted convenience as well. I worked full time. I went to school full time, and we had to do the whole family thing. But as I look back, I realized I might have let that convenience turn me into being complicit when it came to my children's health. And so I want to emphasize this to the moms. I want you to have something convenient. I know we live in a time where, you know, we're moving and things are moving fast, but don't let that convenience make you complicit in contributing to the disease of your child. Remember, before any ailments or symptoms emerge, that's been a pattern of absorbing and consuming these poisonous chemicals for about 10 years. And so it's essential that you start as early as you can intervening. Don't be complicit. I know it's hard. I know we want convenience, but as opposed to that Pop-Tart, please don't do as opposed to a Pop-Tart, come up with an alternative, something nutritious, something animal-based perhaps. Don't be complicit. But what was your question again? I'm sorry, I didn't want to get out of topic. I wanted to get that in.
I appreciate you going
I
there.
wanted to get that in.
Right. And that's one of the things. So I was just trying to, and I appreciate you like sharing that, but what I was asking about is now that you've kind of changed what you eat, and people are witnessing you at work, whether it's the educators that you work with, or if it's the students that are seeing you bring something different. I was just curious to see, what is their response? Like, what are the things that they're saying? So you're not going to come to work with a case of drinks. So let me just tell you about me. There was a time that if there was a party in school, my kids know I was bringing cupcakes. They knew Miss Payne had the cupcakes. Don't bring me no fake cake. I got the cake, right? If we're going to do donuts in the morning in the faculty, right? Those are things that I would never do at this point, because I know better. So I'm saying now that your lunch or what you eat, because we don't really believe in breakfast, lunch, or dinner, but what you're fueling with during the day, people who are witnessing that, I was just asking, like, what is their response to you?
I'm the food police. Of course, I'm the one who, when I come around, people kind of hide what they have, because they know I've preached about nutritional content versus taste or just instant gratification. And so they know me by now. Whenever I get an opportunity or a teachable moment, as I refer to it as, of course, I reinforce some of the importance of not eating some of the ingredients in particular. I encourage them to read the ingredients of the candies and the sugary things that they're eating. I advise them of the meaning of some of the ingredients, and that a lot of times it be shock and awe on their faces. And I'm sure many times they've come back and told me they've had conversations with their parents about some of the things that I've said and we've discussed, and they've embraced it. Some of my colleagues, of course, it's been really interesting with my colleagues. I've actually fell out with some of them. Some of them avoid me. Some of the relationship I had prior to this journey, I no longer have, because I'm so passionate about, what I do now. I'm not going back, and I'm adamant about that. And so I've lost a lot of, friendships with some of the colleagues, but for the most part, all of them, they got a chance to actually witness the physical evolution. And so it's just not what I'm saying. They actually physically see what I'm doing and how it's impacting me. And so, and all of them, they say, you look good, you're taking care of yourself, but they're just not ready for that kind of transition and commitment.
So when you think about, I've had those same things. I've, been walking with people, hanging out with people, and eventually the conversation. I always say that this topic can be heavy. Health is heavy, right? And so I think the thing is that people are not looking for this truth, if you will, in this space, right? Somebody at work or a health coach or a health practitioner. It's just not where they look to find, because we have been so inundated with, this is what we get from our doctors. So, we have these conversations with people, and it's hard sometimes to hear it. I mean, many of them know what's happening. What they don't know is what to do about it. So questions back to you again is, what are some shifts that you would say that teachers or parents can start to make right now? Okay, so we know that we didn't get here overnight. You're 55, I'm 54. We've had a long journey with sugar, with, challenges in our health, issues that we thought we were just going to live with for a lifetime. And so I'm just curious to see from your perspective in the schools, if you're having conversations with parents or teachers, what are some of the subtle shifts that we can start to make? Because right now, if you think about it, we're praising kids with food, right? You made an A on a test, and I'm going to give you a bag of Takis. You made the honor roll. The honor roll includes being able to come to a pizza party, right? And so if you could talk a little bit about what are some shifts that teachers and parents can start to make.
I always advocate not using food as a celebratory event. My aim would be to impress upon them that food is it's like a pit stop. It's that your body reaches a point where you need some nutrients, some satisfaction, some satiation. Your body needs nutrients. And so when you get hungry, it's not that you're craving for a particular food or taste. You might be craving that, but your body is telling you that it's needing some nutrients. And so when I eat, I shop for nutrients, not taste. And that's a significant difference. But in terms of parents, I would say forego the sugary drinks. Don't allow them to drink them sugary drinks, especially those quick energy kind of drinks. Don't buy them. I think that's a really good start. No more sugary drinks. Limit their sweets, limit the amount of sweets, and then the grains also. When I say grains, I'm talking about the cereal, the boxed cereals. I mean, we all know they're essentially just grains. And what do we use grains for? They use grains to fatten things up, things that don't have the money to really live and sustain themselves. It's like a food for poor people. And so we've turned it into a breakfast for our people. And we're not poor, and we're not looking for just sustenance. We're trying to live. And so forego the cereal. Don't buy any cereal. When you send them to school, please don't send them with them Lunchables or any Takis or anything like that. Just subtle little shifts away from what you provide for them to take to school. Teachers, I always encourage my colleagues, they know not to even ask me for treats or anything. I tell them I would not under any circumstances give you that, son. I can't in good conscience do that. And so I don't have that issue. I've never bribed kids anyway try to bribe them with gifts just for behavioral purposes, but they know not to ask me for anything like that because I'm not going to contribute to that. And so teachers could just kind of stop focusing on rewarding kids with sugary treats and come up with something different, something more personal and challenging, perhaps.
And what would you suggest in that area? What would you suggest that would be celebratory? Because, of course, we all want a reward for doing well. So what would you suggest? For me, I kind of moved to like a sticker kind of program with my students. Pencils was a good thing to give since you were always looking for a pencil.
Well, this is 25 now. We don't really hardly use pencils anymore. So what I would say is, right, I mean, that's we have advanced a little bit for that. But I would think something more substantive. Students always look forward to homework passes. They always look forward to, you could take a day, so if you've done something worth being recognized for, okay, maybe we substitute that for a grade, or maybe we give you a homework pass, or make something you can feel as opposed to something you have to eat. You still have the sense of accomplishment, but you don't have to consume these poisonous snacks, as a result, and then being encouraged as a reward. I think that's a miscarriage of justice in my view.
So those are all good ideas for parents and students to consider. I like the way you talked about the sugary drinks. And I just want to add to that, like even Capri Sun, get out there and do your research, because we give our kids those Capri Suns, send them to school with those, again, quick convenience, right? We think about chips. I'm guilty. So this is me not talking to you. This is me talking with you, because I've been that person where, I would go to Sam's, buy the whole big box with all the multiple different, let's start reading those ingredients that are on there. And what you're going to find is that those ingredients do not amount to food. There is no nourishment, not any nourishment in those products. And so we continue to feed them. The ramen noodles are like a pasta. That pasta metabolizes in the body as sugar. So what we're saying is all day long, your children are getting sugar, even if you're feeding them fruits and vegetables, right? So I hear this conversation around more fruits, more vegetables. Vegetables are going to metabolize in the body as sugar. If it's a potato, it's going to metabolize in the body as sugar. If it is you think sometimes you say go from white potato to sweet potato, right? If you think about macaroni, let's just break down macaroni, y'all. It's not food at all. It is pasta. I call pasta sheetrock. It's the same as water and flour. It's the same as bread. So one of the experiments that you can do at home with your children, and this happened by accident at our house. I was with a family and we were doing what I call a pantry purge. And someone had given them some bread. And so when I do pantry purges, I literally take the food away with me, because I use it as examples in class, in workshops. But I took away a bag of buns, and they were in the garage, and I was sharing with Sam and my son. I was like, hey, look at all this stuff I bought. And it had been out there maybe 3 or 4 days. Y'all, the bread was totally molded. It was totally molded. I was like, wow. But I still have kept it because of what I want us to understand is that that's what's happening inside the body. So what's the one tip that you could do differently with your kids? If your kid is a burger eater, they love burgers, feed your kids the burger without the bun. If they love pizza, now I'm gonna have to turn this back over to Mr. Davis. So when we start talking about pizza, because Mr. Davis eats pizza almost every day, but he's gonna tell you how in just a moment. But if your kids love burgers, you would do better feeding them the burger patty. Even if you kept all the other stuff. Let's say you don't get rid of the ketchup yet. Let's say you don't get rid of the pickles, the lettuce, the onions, right? You can feed your kids 3 burger patties versus giving them a bun. A bun is not food. There is no nourishment in there. It literally is sticking inside of their system. And this is part of why their blood sugar is running high and they are high on insulin, right? So I'm going to let Mr. Davis talk before we change gears about his pizza hack that does not interrupt blood sugar. Mr. Davis.
So I want to expand on it's really rooted in one of our sayings is that there is no deprivation with the way that we eat. And so with pizza in particular, most of the bad ingredients and stuff that is bad for you is in the crust. And so what I typically do, I'll buy my favorite brand of pizza that I like. Really it's the sauce, the taste of the sauce. I'll cook it. I'll separately cook my own ground beef and sausages and anything else that I wanted to add to the mixture. And then I'll scrape the toppings off the pizza and combine it with my own individual meat that I made. And sort of it's like a pizza casserole, if you will, with all the ingredients, everything except the crust. And as Nietzsche was talking, I could just hear the moms, Nietzsche, why I can't do nothing. That's convenient. I don't have time to, and I would love for your viewers to put their thoughts in the comments about how they would go about doing it, or their questions about how we get that done. Like, for example, you're a busy mom and you have 3 or 4 kids. You don't have time. What could you do? You can get a 5-pound thing of ground beef, brown it up real good, put you some cream cheese in it, put you some onions and green peppers in it, get you some of them flour. What do they call, Nietzsche? The egg-based tortillas. They're just like taco shells.
The egg white life is what we recommend. Egg white life, no carbs.
And then they got tacos. You could put lettuce, tomatoes, cheese, and all that on it. And the shell itself is made out of an egg white. And so you're not consuming, you're imitating some of the meals that they're familiar with. You've just adjusted the ingredients a little bit so they won't have that impact on their body. And that's how you do incrementally. And that's just one. I eat a lot of pizza. I do the rotel. Instead of rotel, we do lotel because of course, it doesn't have none of that cheese, especially that Velveeta. That's not even cheese, and so that's not even food. And so obviously we would never use that. But we have a version of rotel that we use just ground beef, just some cheese, and some seasoning, and it's just like rotel, but it's called lotel because it doesn't have the calories or all the junk in it. And so you have to be creative. But there are ways that you can prepare nutritious meals for your family at a reasonable cost.
Absolutely. And so when you think about the low tail, what we do differently to it, and we call it low tail for low carb, it's real ingredients. We use cream cheese versus using Velveeta. Velveeta tells you on the package that it's a cheese product. American cheese is not cheese. If you're going to feed your children cheese, feed them cheese off the block where you are cutting it, they're shredding it. This is a great opportunity, like, to engage your kids, get them involved, help them to also be an advocate for themselves relative to how they eat. And so the thing is this: you must become what we call an informed ingredient inspector. We call it an I3. What we know is that everything that is in the center aisles of the store are primarily there for profit. They have no nutritional value. It's all box food that the US government allows them to sell us and then try to help us say that moderated. There is no moderation, right? So now you are shopping in the stores, and the best place for you to shop is along the outer skirts of the store. And if you think about it, that's where the electricity is to maintain food. So you got your fruits and vegetables over to the right. You go across the back, you got your meat, and then you got your dairy. That's where you're going to be safest feeding your kids, feeding yourself, really becoming what my husband calls the nutritional manager in your home or in your school. You don't want to be a perpetrator of making children sicker or making light of this. Because when you become pre-diabetic, I tell people you've already been overloaded on sugar for about 10 years. For 10 years, you've been overloaded on sugar. And so we're just trying to give you a few tips. So turn it over on the back. This is what I often say. They lie to you on the front, but on the back it says nutrition facts. Why is it nutrition facts? They must tell you the truth on the back. But this proverbial day, they don't expect us to look at the back. And so I'm saying to each of you to look at the back, read these ingredients. Even when you're in a low carb space, even if it says keto, and you start to read what the thing says, and you look at the ingredients like ranch dressing, all of those dressings, palm oil, seed oils. I know they told us to go from the white dressings to the clear dressings. It's the same thing. So you got to find good brands in order to have good choices for your children and for yourself. Like, this is not just about the kids. We're focused on the kids and the caregivers because you're caring for these kids. Think about it like this. When you're on a plane, they tell you to put your mask on first before you put a mask on someone else. And that's the same thing we're saying. Like, look into your own labs, look into your own choices so that you can make a decision better for you and you can change your household. I see one of my clients here that I featured on the show. She did this with her family. She shifted from feeding her son, I think it was Nutella, every day. He was, wanting Nutella, to now he has his own little ground beef song that he's singing. What I want you guys to know before I switch back to Mr. Davis is that meat is not bad for you and it's not bad for your kids. Your kids should be consuming meat on a regular basis. Ground beef, bacon, eggs. Even if in the morning time you have to, on Sundays, boil up 24 eggs. Just take the whole 18 carton, boil them all up, where you can just go snatch boiled eggs out the refrigerator, throw some bacon over in there. That's a great lunch to send with your students to school. It's a great thing for them to eat in the car. Does it take some preparation? It does. But it also, if you do it now, it will decrease the amount of doctor's visits you'll have with your students. It will decrease the amount of special education having to have your kid evaluated for ADHD, when actually what's happening is it is all the sugar that the kids are eating in foods that metabolize as sugar. So when you hear us talking about sugar, we're not just talking about sweet tasting. We're talking about the things that hit your body as sugar. Mr. Davis, I was just see if you had anything to add to that.
I did. I just want to just reiterate the urgency, and I want to inject this. In 2021, the United Nations is where all the nations of the world meet. They met and passed a resolution declaring food a human right. Now, I mean, we might ask each other, well, that's obvious. Food is it should be a human right, not a privilege. There were two countries that voted against that resolution. The United States of America and Israel voted against that resolution. If the United States of America voted against a resolution declaring food a human right, what does that tell you guys? The positive thing is this is an issue that you get to control. Despite all the outside forces and things that are coming up against you and your kids in the form, we have a lot going on these days. We're living in very interesting times, y'all. There is a lot coming at us. We're looking at things that we can't believe what we're seeing. We're being advised or encouraged not to believe what we see, but what we hear. It's a lot of things going on. But in the midst of all this, the one thing you can control is what food your family consumes. And I urge you, I implore you, take actionable steps to protect your family and particularly your kids.
Absolutely. I just put in the chat, in the comments, metabolicrevolution.org. Metabolicrevolution.org. Let me show this on the screen. Please look up this website. So they are on a mission to actually ban processed foods. You can go out there now and sign the petition to ban processed food in schools. So go to the metabolicrevolution.org. Sam and I both participated in their first rally back in October. We walked on in Washington, D.C. to start to have this conversation. And so you get a chance to be a part of this, right? So please do that. The other thing I want to add is that there's also a movement right now by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I want you all to keep hearing that I'm saying agriculture to help you understand why we are inundated with so much grains and grass and all the things, because it comes out of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, not from science. So there is a vested interest to make sure that we eat agriculture. So that's the political piece of it that we're just highlighting that for you to consider. But we are grateful that, and I'm going to put this in the chat as well, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture is implementing new rules to decrease sugar in school meals, impacting the National School Lunch Program. So they're setting these limits on added sugar and sodium in school meals, maintaining standards for milk and grains. So this is the thing. They're saying by 2027, that's 2 years from now, added sugars will be limited to less than 10% of the weekly calories in school meals for both breakfast and lunch. Now, we are excited that they're acknowledging it. My question back to you as a parent is you can start now. You can start eliminating sugar now, because sugar is the culprit for what's happening to your students. All right, so then they talk about these phases. So the phases start this school year, and it's supposed to be fully implemented by 2027. Here's the thing. Now, one of the reasons why they say they have to wait for this change to be fully implemented is because the companies that provide the food need time to get ready. It's absurd, right? So right now in a school, typically on a school day, where I know that many parents are starting to understand what gluten is doing. But a student, if we had a child and our child was going to school and we needed our child to have a low carb meal, which would mean they would need to be eating some meat, they would need to be eating some real eggs, they wouldn't be having seed oils. There's not an option for that right now. So those are the kinds of things that we're pushing for. And again, remember, we're not just talking about schools here. The other thing is, even in churches, when we're having church functions, vacation Bible school, Sunday school, we have to find another way to celebrate children rather than some cheap food that is ultimately going to make them sick. So, Mr. Davis, before I go into giving them some labs to consider.
Okay, good. That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, give them something they can do.
Absolutely. Do you have something else you need to add?
No, I was just going to say that this is school is starting back. You have athletes have to have physicals. Young kids are due for vaccines, vaccinations, which is a whole nother discussion. But this will be the opportune time for you to share with them what they can do in terms of their labs and what they can do with those.
So you're going to need a pen and a paper for this one. And perhaps I'll go back and put them in the comments. So the labs that you need to consider for your students, one of them is, we know the HbA1c. This reflects how your child, or you in particular, what the average amount of sugar, glucose over 3 months. So the value that is like starting to be a red flag is about a 5.4 to a 5.6. Now, usually what you're going to hear at your doctor is that, what your doctor is going to say is that that's a normal range. So what do they mean by normal? What they mean by normal is that the child is not pre-diabetic or they're not diabetic yet. So, but I'm giving you a value 5.4 to 5.6 to say that over this time frame, they've been running high blood sugar. That's pretty high, okay? If you want optimal health, optimal healing. So this is what I say, when people are diagnosed with prediabetes, usually you have been running this high blood sugar for 10 years. So what I'm finding now in my own experience, and this just happened to me today at the hair salon, a young lady was in the hair salon. She said to me that she was at the doctor and that the doctor told her that her A1C was a 5.6, or the nurse. And she was proud to say that this was normal. And of course, me sitting there knowing differently, I said, well, what they mean by normal is that you're not pre-diabetic yet. So let me tell you all, the pre-diabetic range starts at 5.7. So to send a person away and say, just watch it with the 5.6 is very dangerous, because you already see that they're moving in the wrong direction. So if I'm going to wait a year and come back because I have a 5.6, guess what? When I come back, it's probably going to be 5.8, or I've had a stroke, right? So now I'm saying, get your child an A1C. You should know that number just like you know your kid's social security number, the same way you know their date of birth, know what their A1C. Coupled with that, you want a fasting insulin. Fasting insulin is not very common. Most doctors do not do a fasting insulin. So what does that mean when I say do a fasting insulin? Fasting insulin is the hormone that regulates sugar. It is it runs it. It's the boss. But when boss got to work a little bit harder, then that means that boss go get help. That means more insulin is coming. So that means that insulin is all over your body. And when insulin is all over your body, then this is how inflammation starts. This is how it gets to the brain. That inflammation, that sugar that they've been eating, it's unregulated at this point. So there is no regulator for it. So that means that this is why we have what's called inflammation. This is why we have big bellies. This is why our necks are black. Our eyes are turning black, right? We got hanging arms. It's happening to our children the same way. And again, remember I said earlier, this is not about genetics. This is not hereditary. This is that we're eating the same diet. So what we're proposing today is that you consider changing the diet, going back to eating meat. I remember my grandmother had a bacon can, a grease can. We ate real butter. And then the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, got some bad information. And they dropped in and said, take all that butter stuff out and start eating margarine, start eating low fat. Don't eat any fatty red meat. It was bad advice, and we're here to sound the alarm on that. So right now, those are the main two that I want you to consider, fasting insulin and then the HbA1c. But you also want to consider getting an ALT and AST. That is for the liver. So we are seeing children at alarming rates that are having what they had to give it a new name. The name used to just be fatty liver disease. That was the name of it. But it usually was tied to alcoholism, alcoholics were getting fatty liver disease. So now we have a new name for it, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And why is that? Because we're seeing the same signs in the liver with people who don't drink alcohol are being diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver. Get that test done for your children while you're in this span, as Mr. Davis said, of going back to school, getting physicals, and they just putting them on the scale, telling you how much they weigh. You need blood work. You need lab work. The same way we are in school with the academics, we want to know and be data driven so we can know what to teach next. We want to be data driven parents, data driven caregivers to know what's happening with our students. So consider those test results, looking at those tests for your students. Now, last thing I want to try to talk us through, and Mr. Davis talks about this all the time. And Mr. Davis, I'm going to turn it over to you to go a little deeper with this about the self-identify, the self-advocating, and then this thing around being a part of a community and how crucial that is for even our students, as young as they are, to recognize. So if a kid is saying, hey, mom, I don't like vegetables. No, you need to eat your green vegetables. We're saying today, don't make your kids eat those vegetables. Kids have an innate taste to know what's good, and we have continued to change that over time. Last thing I'll say before I turn it over to Mr. Davis for this part is, if you are only feeding your students fruit and vegetables, plant-based, vegan, vegetarian is a huge market base right now. Your kid is only eating sugar. If you are a vegetarian, a vegan, or plant-based, and you have no meat, you're wearing a badge of honor that says that I don't eat meat. You are only eating sugar. All of that is metabolizing in sugar. I'm working with vegans. I'm working with vegetarians. I too was a vegan and a vegetarian at one time on my journey. And what I realized is that I was only eating sugar. So I had a higher A1C. I had inflammation, diagnosed with autoimmune lupus, dandruff, kids that are dealing with acne issues. It is tied to sugar. Eczema tied to sugar. You got to get that sugar out of the diet. All right, Mr. Davis.
Well, thank you. When you talk about self-identifying and self-advocating and amplifying your voice by joining a like-minded community, just to associate it with what we've talked about today, when you're self-identifying, you're going to start to understand what foods you like. I hear it all the time. People say, well, I can't eat meat. They think they've identified some specific things about them, but they say, I can't eat meat. It don't digest right, or it don't do this. And I try to explain to them that's not it. It's just that you're sick and you have a lot of damage, and so your body can absorb the nutrients of meat like it can. But that's the process. Identifying how your body responds and reacts to certain things, whether you're a child or an adult. That's the process of self-identifying. The self-advocating, I was going to talk to the parents about that, because as they're doing these physicals and the doctors are telling them, well, your numbers look good, please don't accept that as an acceptable response. You need detailed information, about the test results. What does this mean? I know a lot of them are insisting on staying in there 1 or 2 minutes because they don't get paid beyond that, and so they don't have time to sit there and explain everything to you. But be persistent. You have to advocate for yourself. And then once you start to do that for yourself and for your kids, for example, if you send in a note to the school saying, I want my child to be on a low carb diet, no sugars and all that, then you're going to have to start interacting with school officials. And you're going to have to know how to advocate for yourself. What's legal? Can I even require them to do that? Yes, you can. You can request a specific diet for your child. But as you start to do those things, you're going to realize how lonely it can be when you're advocating for yourself and for others. And that's when you need a community to help amplify your voice, because the community is saying the same thing that you are. And so that's the process. That's the process of healing entirely that we're encouraging you guys to embrace today. And this is only the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So a couple of things I want to close with is this thought around, as a parent, like, being empowered yourself. This advocating that Mr. Davis is talking about is shaking up some stuff, right? Not accepting these things as normalized, or feeling like you are defeated as a parent. What can you do about it, right? There are things that you can do about it. You can start at home, right? Declare to yourself that we don't buy noodles in this house. We don't do macaroni. Even if you need to switch to putting some cheese on cauliflower, it would be a better option than feeding your child. Literally, pasta is the same thing as sheetrock. It is water and flour. I remember when I was a kid, we made paper mache dolls. You remember, if we rubbed that paper mache together good enough, we would have a whole person. That's what's happening in your body when you eat that. So we're just talking about some of these tweaks that you can start to make, right? Don't feel like wheat bread is healthier. White bread versus wheat bread. It's not healthier. It is actually worse for your body. So the things that you can do is to start to work with your own pantry with your kids, like letting your kids know, find out what your staples are. As Mr. Davis said, for us, a staple in our house is ground beef and a whole lot of it. I picked up some today. Find out those staples that are going to actually give your child nutrients, right? And then you want to involve your kids in meal planning. Let them be a part of it. Right now, they're stuck on taste. Things taste good, but you have to teach them that food is not about taste. Food is about nutrients, right? You have a kid come in the morning, they all laid out, they can't make it through the day. It's not because they didn't rest. It's about what they ate. So even that it's okay to normalize eating beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. If you start right there, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, that's BBBE. Just start right there, right? But is pork bad? No, pork is not bad for you. We eat pork as well. We eat bacon almost every day. Pork chops, not bad for you. These things are nutrient dense and your body can utilize them. So
What do they do, Nitra? What do parents do when kids start to push back because of the change in the routine? I don't want to do that. We ain't been eating. We've been eating this. I mean, it sounds good, but we know practically it's going to be some pushback.
that's a
But
great
what
question.
I say is, you tell your kids this. I'm just advocating for you now while you're young. I'm trying to protect you from having all these ailments when you get older. That's all. You're
Right.
protecting them.
And really helping them understand what is actually happening to their body, right? When they eat that. So again, a client of mine was, initially she was like, no, this is not a topic. It's off limits to you for us to have this conversation. But it's when she got better, it's almost impossible for you to get better and still feed it out. Like for me as a educational services, I used to would stop by whatever donut place was in that area and take a box of donuts. I cannot bring myself to do that now. Right at my house, if you come to my house, you're going to eat nutrient dense food. But as Mr. Davis said, we're not deprived. We eat good. A ribeye. What's wrong with a ribeye? What's wrong with a good ground chuck burger? Nothing is wrong with any of those things. We eat good. And I put the word satiety in the comments because satiety is what you're looking for. And so I ask this question to you as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator. Would you, all of us are drivers of cars, would you put sugar in your gas tank? I don't even want you to answer it right here in the chat. I just want you to reflect on that for yourself. And what I know is your answer is going to be no. And then I want you to reflect and ask yourself, why not? Why wouldn't you put that in there? And usually it's going to tear it up. It's going to break it apart. It's going to do this. It's the same thing it's doing to our bodies. And so my question back to you is, are we treating our cars better than we treat our children? That's the question. Are we treating cars? These cars are outliving us. We die and folks are fighting over their car because it's still going. Because guess what? You treated it so good. And what we're saying is that you are a vessel. This is the vessel you have. This is the vessel your children have. And you get a chance now to start over and get this right. My son is 31 years old. If I knew now, then he would have came along in a totally different trajectory. If you're interested in hearing my son's story, you can go back to episode 1. because what I want to do now is help parents leave an inheritance, a healing inheritance to their children. And so we come in this space to tell the truth, right? You can fact check us, the things that we're saying. Read the labels. Look at these statistics that are coming out about our children, about us as a race, Black people. And I'm just going to say that out loud, right? We top the charts in every kind of way when it comes to health statistics. And what I'm learning is that there is a normal and healthy range of stuff for us, and there's a different one for others. But we won't know that if we don't start advocating for ourselves. Ask questions. Gone is the day where we sit around and say, all my numbers are good, and proudly pump your chest with it, right? I'm saying know what the numbers are. Because if your A1C is anything above a 5.2, a 5.1, it bears watching, because if you stay on the same trajectory, it's going to keep going up. You want that to be going down. If your doctor has never done a fasting insulin on you, you need a fasting insulin, right? So let me say this. Dementia, as we talk about being caregivers, and now we are caregivers for aging parents. So we have within us caregiving for children and caregiving for adults, right? And we say things like they're going back to a child. They're acting like a child again. Guess what? It's because their brain is on sugar. So dementia and Alzheimer's, again, fact check me, go do your homework. Those things are now called type 3 diabetes because it is excessive sugar to the brain. Another thing that's happening is that we keep lowering the cholesterol. That's for another show. And so when we put people on statins and we lower cholesterol, then those people are not having fat to their brain. So the research is showing that people who die with dementia or die with Alzheimer's is that they had less fat in their brain. We need fat, y'all. The macronutrients that you need are protein and fat. You can eat it all day, every day. Carbohydrates in any form, fruits, vegetables, sweet treats, whatever, are non-essential to your diet. Before I close, I'm going to turn it to Mr. Davis to see if he has some last parting words. I want to thank him for being here today. But do you have some last parting words?
I just want to encourage your viewers to get involved. If you've derived any benefit from this show, like and share it with their folks. We're trying to initiate the conversation among our people. A lot of things going on. Vegetarian, we hear stuff about vegetarian. We hear stuff about vegan. We hear stuff about DeNitra. What's that other word that you use? Pescatarian or whatever. There's so many. There are so many different categories, and we know our people are inundated with information, with inaccurate information mostly, and we want to be the source for real, accurate, research-based information. And so you have questions about your personal stuff, or maybe your family member is in a dire situation and you want to know what you can do to help them with their diet. I mean, just spread the word, get involved. Come on the show every Saturday. We know it's Saturday, it's a highly competitive time slot, but it's worth your time. We're talking about life and death. So, hey, get involved.
Absolutely. So today, our goal was to sound the alarm. This whole month, we will be doing kids and caregivers, right? We were looking to make nutritional kids. So our business name, Knewtritional, actually is because we believe if you knew better, should you do better? And what we intend to be is the gap over this break in knowledge, this misinformation, so that you can do better. So today, we really want to help you start with your babies. How do you get your babies eating better? I was on the phone with someone who was in one of my private groups, and she was feeding her baby a puree of boiled eggs, right? Versus the formula that has high fructose corn syrup in it. So this is the kind of changes that we're trying to make now so we can live longer. We can have this quality of life. So we want to tell truth earlier. Your kids are capable of understanding what's happening with their bodies. They know when something is wrong, when something is not wrong. And if not, that's the thing that we should be teaching them. So you can offer them truth early versus having them on all these prescriptions and procedures, right? So we're giving kids pills earlier and earlier. I remember as a child never even knowing what a medicine was. Like that wasn't even something that came across me. But I have students who have, when I taught, they had 3 or 4 bottles. They had to go to the nurse to get those pills, right? You could change the trajectory. And when you start to change this, have a conversation with your kids. Ask them, what do you feel like when you eat this versus when you eat that? Kids will be able to tell you. So I want to drop Maria Emmerich's name and Craig Emmerich. Craig is going to join us on the show, and you all will get a chance to meet him. But go out and find Maria and Craig Emmerich. They have a sugar-free kids book as well as a sugar-free kids page that you could go to where you could create recipes with your children. If you or anybody you know is a diabetic, and you've been following the ADA, which stands for American Diabetes Association, I'm going to prompt you to switch gears and go to the American Diabetes Society, right? That is Dr. Ken Berry is leading that charge. You're going to get some better information about how to heal diabetes, where, in my opinion, the ADA is teaching you how to manage it with the meds that they can sell you. So tonight, Mr. Davis, thank you again for coming on the show, sharing your insight, what you're seeing in schools each day. Thank you for sharing a bit of your journey. What we want to do is we want to remember that when one family changes, it invites others to do the same. You don't have to get it all right, but what we're asking tonight is that you do get started. Get started on your journey. Start pulling out some things. As Mr. Davis said earlier, if nothing else, stop the sugary drinks. Look on the back of there and see how many carbs you're feeding your children. You know, if it means not doing the French fries at McDonald's and say, hey, man, I tell my son, get you 3 or 4 burger patties. Use the fork. A bun is a utensil, and skip that. So thank you for joining us on today. Keep coming back every Saturday at 3:30 unless something else. We will still record each Saturday, but keep joining us. We want to be healed, and we want to be healed together. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everyone.